What's going on, kid family? Welcome back to the channel. On today's video, as you can see, we got a bunch of maintenance items right over here, and the question for this video is, how do you get your brand new vehicle or your used vehicle that you just bought up to 1 million miles? Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you what I personally think are the correct steps to take in order to get your vehicle's wheels turning to 1 million miles. Back in the day, in the 1970s, 80s, it was something very spectacular to see your vehicle going to 100,000 miles. But these days, with technology improving, with synthetic oils, synthetic transmission fluids, and the better engine design and transmission design, the clearances are much better technology used. It is easy. 100,000 miles right now is a piece of cake. Heck, in my Honda Civic, they don't even recommend changing the spark plugs, which are iridium spark plugs, for 100,000 miles. So, should you consider all the maintenance items that your vehicle calls for? Changing your oil every 10, 15, 20,000 miles on a synthetic fluid. Is that correct? Should you follow that? Well, that all depends on you. In this video, I'm going to talk about the maintenance program that I use on my Honda vehicles. And we're going to start off from the top and go to the bottom. First, most important, crucial thing is your engine's oil. Well, you're probably asking yourself, my vehicle calls for oil changes every 15 to 20,000 miles, especially if it's a German car. Should you consider taking that risk to run your oil for 20,000 miles? Personally, I would not. If you want to go ahead and follow your oil maintenance minder system on your vehicle, so be it. But most likely, if you're driving in the city, or if you're towing, or if you're racing, you are causing a lot of stress and damage to your vehicle's oil and breaking it down more than you think. Those maintenance minders that they have for 20,000 miles, that's under regular driving. And even though you might think you're doing regular driving, most likely you are not. And if you're living in climates where it's really hot, really cold, or both, yes, I would highly recommend don't stretch that oil interval all the way to the max, which your vehicle's manufacturer is saying. So I change my oil every 4,000 to 4,500 miles on the synthetic oil. I like to change it once a year before the seasons change from summer or from fall to winter and from winter to spring. Now, come on, man. Can you see what I'm trying to film, man? Come on, man. What you gonna do? Come on, come here, man. Hey. All right, and going down here, we have the automatic transmission fluid. Again, this is a Honda genuine fluid. And originally, when I had my 2007 Honda Civic, I was using the automatic transmission fluid ATF Z1. The Z1 was the recommended fluid for the vehicle, but over the years, they created the ATF DW1, which is a full synthetic. So obviously, with the better synthetic, and Honda saying it's okay to use the synthetic fluid on cars that were using the ATF Z1 previously, you know darn well I'm using the synthetic fluid. Now, I highly recommend, if you own a Honda or Acura, stick with their automatic transmission fluids. I've heard plenty of horror stories when you're switching your fluids to another manufacturer, Redline, Amsoil, what's that, Royal Purple. If you're switching your transmission fluid to those, just stay cautious. I mean, I wouldn't want to risk it, and these are fairly cheap. I picked up 24 quarts for $100 locally from a local seller. So there's deals out there, you just gotta shop around. Now, also for my Honda transmission fluid, I do not do transmission flushes. I love to do drain and refills. It is so simple to do a transmission drain and refill. It's just as simple as changing your oil. Yes, you won't get all the transmission fluid out there like a transmission flush will, but again, working in Jiffy Lube and hearing a lot of stories, you don't want to do a transmission flush. It can damage some gaskets and some O-rings in the transmission. So for me, every 30,000 miles, I'll do a drain and refill on the transmission. And just recently, I picked up this transmission filter right over here. It's an inline transmission filter. I'm used to having transmission filters in the oil pan, so this is something new to me. Actually, I did do transmission drain and refills, but I never switched the filter when I picked up the transmission fluid. So we are going to be installing this filter. Next time around, we change the transmission fluid. And don't forget, use your gaskets for the transmission drain plug bolt so you don't strip the plug. All right, now that we got the main components covered, which is the engine and the transmission, there are a few other components you want to think about that many people just disregard. So if your vehicle has all-wheel drive, so you are most likely going to use the differential fluid, which is the Honda dual pump 2 fluid. Again, such an easy process. It is a drain and refill, and I like to do this when I do my transmission flushes about every 30,000 miles. So the next maintenance item on your vehicle that you might want to consider flushing out is your antifreeze or your coolant in the vehicle. Now, a lot of people don't touch this item, and that's a problem because the ratio in your vehicle of antifreeze and water over time is going to change. You're going to add some antifreeze or some water in between here and there during the life of the vehicle, and that temperature protection of where it's protecting your vehicle is going to change. You definitely want to check your coolant with a gauge. Make sure it is protected to the appropriate degree of your weather climate. Here in the Midwest, we have freezing winters, and summers are pretty hot over here, reaching up to 100 degrees as well. So every 5 years or 60,000 miles is what Honda recommends to change the fluid. Again, I love to do a drain and refill. We'll just open up the radiator on the bottom, drain everything out, refill it with new fluid. I like to do this once again, for the most part, every time I'm doing my transmission fluid or my differential fluid every 30,000 miles. Since I am not taking all the fluid out at one time, I like to do it more frequently. And again, I picked a bunch of these up for about $40. And also, guys, you want to change your brakes whenever they're due. We just did an upgrade with the Nakamoto Power Series slotted and drilled rotors. Check my other videos out if you are curious how they work, how I installed them. But going on to the brakes, nobody really changes their brake fluid. Brake fluid can last a long time in your vehicle, but did you know the recommended change interval for brake fluid is every 2 years? Yes. Brake fluid absorbs water naturally, and the more water it absorbs through your brakes, through your brake lines, it is going to decrease the boiling point of your brake fluid. So they're going to get hotter, they're going to get squishier, and your braking capacity won't be that great. Also, water in the brake lines will cause corrosion over time. How many times did you guys see rusted brake lines? Yes, rust accumulates on the outside of the brake line, but it also accumulates on the inside. And if they're working together, your brake lines will fail much sooner. So every 2 years they recommend it. I gotta say, myself, I don't do it every 2 years, but I like to change the brake fluid every time I change the brakes, so that equals out anywhere from 3 to 4 years. But if you have a squishy brake pedal, guys, I highly recommend changing the brake fluid. It is going to help stopping power tremendously. I like to upgrade, obviously, to synthetic fluid whenever I can. I actually have some racing fluid in the vehicle right now, and I tell you, the brakes work much better with the fluid flush. So this all applies to a vehicle that is a daily driver, but does it apply to a vehicle that is a race car that you take to the track, abuse, and use? Yes, it does. And actually, if you're using and abusing your vehicle and tracking it, I would probably cut down the interval even less. I would do it sooner, maybe even an oil change after a aggressive track session. If you go to the drag strip or if you go circuit racing, I would personally just change the oil after the event. Why would you want to risk running used and abused thinned out viscosity oil on your vehicle, which can cause wear between the bearings, the journals in your vehicle? And I know a lot of you guys are probably running manual transmissions in your vehicle, which I wish I had a manual right now too. But the manual transmission fluid, you could probably go a little bit longer than 30,000-40,000 miles just because it's a closed system. It doesn't create as much heat as a torque converter does with the automatic transmission, so it does last longer. I would probably change transmission fluid every 50,000 miles or so. Or if you grind your gears and you want to flush out that transmission fluid and put some new fluid in, that is definitely acceptable. And out of all these fluids, I gotta summarize, the most important thing would probably be the engine oil, because the engine oil gets a lot of blow-by, fuel contamination, and excessive heat, and that degrades the quality of the oil, causing it to go bad sooner than any other fluids in the vehicle. Alright guys, well, thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned something important or valuable in this video. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe for more content, and we'll see you on the next video.
I ain't here for the money, I ain't here for the fame. Though it might be nice to own a jet plane, I'ma do it all for you. Come along and see it's true, but the world is pretty cold. You might need a sweater too. I'ma put a ride on ya. Kid from California, trying to make it in life. In school they never taught ya. Dreams